None of this makes any sense to me. What am I missing, Uncle? What am I supposed to see?
Ravaging this world and all hope of resistance. My minions will find the stone. Wherever you choose to hide it. Then, at long last, Osmodan shall reign as the prime evil.
Welcome to the Blizzard Cinematics Diablo 3 Making of the Black Soulstone panel. Please give a warm welcome to our panelists.
Hello and welcome to the BlizzCon 2011 Diablo 3 Cinematics panel discussion. My name is Chris Tunick. I was the art director on the Diablo 3 Cinematics, and what you saw here today and yesterday is what internally, well, it's part of what we internally refer to as the Black Soulstone Cinematic. I'm saying that because it's actually called something else in the game, but for simplicity's sake, we're just going to keep referring to it as the Black Soulstone Cinematic for today. Now, you saw about 3 minutes out of a total of around about 27 minutes of pre-rendered cutscenes. And as we tend to do, you know, around every BlizzCon, we'd like to take this opportunity to talk you through our process, how we approach storytelling in a cinematic medium, how we go through our character development process, and what it takes to bring it all up on screen. Now, our esteemed panel here today consists of Mike Kelleher. He's the effects supervisor for our Blizzard film department. There's, go ahead. There's Jim Jang, the production tech lead for the Black Soulstone Cinematic. There's James McCoy, the animation supervisor. That's right. We've got Graham Cunningham, the lead finisher for the Black Soulstone Cinematic. Then Xin Wang, the character modeling supervisor. And Stephen Chen, the look development lead. Now, we will have some time to address any questions you may have after the panel discussion. We've got about 10-15 minutes set aside for a small Q&A. So I'd ask you to hold your horses until then. With that said, I'd say let's not waste any more time and jump right in. Take it away.
All right, Chris, thank you very much. We're very excited to be here, and we are proud to show you some of our work today. Now, if you're going to take away anything from today, it's really the importance of story. And all story in cinematics starts with an idea. That idea gets pitched to a story team. And once that idea becomes strong enough, we put it down in the form of a storyboards. Now, storyboards, think of them as a very cheap way to check and see if your idea is going to work as a film. If your idea does not work, easy. You just quickly iterate with new drawings. That's really how we do it. Storyboarding is a way to establish the composition, the pacing, the cinematography, even the musical landscape. You can plan the entire production with storyboards. They're very powerful, especially if you know exactly what you're going to say with words. And what I mean by that, as an example, Leah in this cinematic is terrified of these lesser evils and Asmodan. Now that itself is what we call like a story beat, a simple story beat. Fear. Leah has to look afraid there. So what we do is we convey that by the way Leah cowers, her body language. We do that by her wide-eyed facial expression, and we do that of what type of camera we choose to use to show her. All these things contribute. Now, every artist in cinematics, that's their goal. Every single artist, programmer, it doesn't matter who you are, if you're a modeler, animator, programmer, whatever, all of us, we have to do everything we can to contribute to story in whatever way possible. So, I'm going to hand it over to Graham, and he's going to talk a little bit how color choice is one of the ways that you can do to enhance story with your discipline.
All right, thanks, James. So, what's up, guys? I get to talk about some of the awesome pre-production artwork that went into the Black Soulstone. And what you can see up here, we called the color script. Now, the color script was something that the director sat down very early on in the show, sat with the concept artists, and spent quite a lot of time to develop. Now, there were two reasons that we spent all this time up front. The first one is similar to what James said with the storyboards. The director was able to very easily make changes and decide what he wanted to do with each of these color script frames. And if something wasn't working, he could very easily change it. And the second reason that we created these was to provide solid artistic reference for all of the artists working on the show. And so these frames are from the first section of the color script. And the main story point that we wanted to cover was that we wanted to create this intimate space that Leah and the Black Soulstone were in. And the background is not really important, so it's sort of a mysterious background. Now, once Leah gets into the dream sequence, what we did here was we wanted to create this really open, vast space and create a feeling for Leah that she was alone and isolated in this huge place. And we also chose a lot of low camera angles. It's a wide-angle lenses to really emphasize how big Asmodan was compared to Leah. Just a few more frames here. And so once Leah once the cinematic steps outside here, this is pretty self-explanatory. We really wanted to paint sort of a hell-on-earth scene. It shows some very desaturated browns and contrasted that with the bright, fiery tones. So as I mentioned, the color script frames were pivotal for our production, and they provided reference for all of the artists working on the show. And we referred to them directly when we got into lighting. I actually think it's pretty cool to see how close some of these color script frames are to the original, to the final artwork, as you can see here. You know, some of these frames we stayed pretty close, and some of the shots, you know, we decided to go with something different, and it sort of depended on and on how the story was unfolding as we went through the production. So overall, I would say it's been an extremely successful process for us, and something that we came to rely on throughout all of the Diablo 3 cinematics productions. And to talk a little bit more about asset development and how it came about, I'll introduce Sheen.
Hi, everyone. I'm going to talk about the character development process. We have worked on D3 for a long time. Over these years, the character's look and design changes according to the game, story, and also, of course, of technology. Some of the change is very subtle, but some of the change rather drastic. So here is the first version of Asmodean concept. As you can see, it's a very strong demonic face with an interesting human mask. This is one of the gray shaded preview of the model. All these lines, including the back cross, it is from the idea originally from the concept artist Victor Lee and the game team, is that they try to play the idea Mark Angel, is that try to mimic the angelic form in a demonic way. He's bold, he's strong, he's powerful, but we find along the way, we find the ideas a little bit too simplistic. So Asmodean is a Lord of Sin. He is not only a brute, he has greed, envy, gluttony, greed, lust, wrath, lots of complicated personality in him. So we want a more complicated design to showing this quality. So we keep trying, and also, of course, for this version, overall, he is too insect and alien-like. So we try to get a more, the demons more flashy look. So this is a second try of our design we tried to use on Asmodean. This design originally designed for the other demon boss. It's a very unique and powerful design. It's a shark-like demon boss with a huge chopping blade. This is all about the demons, right? So this is the version, fully textured version of the model. But soon we realized, we would rather to have more fun to design something special for a lot of scene, Asmodean. So here you go. This is the final concept from Vic and also the game team. And, as you can see here, the bloated body shape suggests the gluttony, greed, and also the piercing, the decorative armor all indicate that his vanity, his pride, so and so on. There's lots of things actually showing up the design as we thought we tried to be, try on the Asmodean. So after back and forth between the game team and the cinematic team, the concept department, with lots of tweaks and iterations, here, this is the locked 2D design on the paper for cinematic. It gives Leah so much contrast by his, body shape, glowing internal, ugly but strong, powerful, demonic face. Soon after, we locked the design on 2D. A 3D sculptor, a character artist, grabbed the design and visualized in 3 dimensions. By using a sculpting software like Mudbox and ZBrush that with brush by brush, stroke by stroke, tweaks the millions of polygons, the design comes alive in 3D. This is one of the work in progress fully textured turntable under one of the specific lights. Of course, during the process, we have to make sure the surface, the volume interacts correctly with different light. With tweaking and painting hundreds of maps and tweaking hundreds of parameters in the shaders, we will be able to, make him alive in 3D with colors. By this point, So on the contrary of the Asmodean very long development cycle, our demon army development cycle is rather short, but successful as well. We picked one of the unique approach that is not very common to us. Usually, the each character got assigned by the character artist to carry through all the way to production. But for this demon army, since we have so many good designs as a guideline, the character team, including me, stop production work for 2 days. We just pick up our favorite design, 1 or 2, and go freely in sculpting stage. So by end of the 2 days, we end up with so many good design and interesting, powerful design for the demons. As you can see, not all of the design make it to the final cinematic, but as we emphasize, as James mentioned, we picked the right design to serve the story. At this point, the demon army already has strong silhouette, great detail, but how can we make the demon alive, even more angry and even more scary? I'm going to have Steven to talk about the demon looked at process.
So after these designs were picked by the directors, the art director will sit down and create what we call a paint over based on these 3D assets. So on the left side of the slide, you're going to see the final paint over for the elite demon. And at Blizzard, we are always seeking opportunities to tell story. So this is an example of how we tell stories through character design. On the demon, you see there's a lot of cuts, bruises, and scars. We try to make them as intimidating as we can, and as battle tested as we can. It's LookDev's job to take these 2D design and translate them into 3D. In the center of the slide, you see a work in progress 3D model for the elite demon. As you can see, we're trying to capture some of the flavors from the art director's paintings. And on the far right side is the final elite demon model used in the cinematic. This guy is the demon Haunt. The particular challenge for this fella is to get the skin contrast to show through, because parts of him is very matte and very dark, kind of rhino, elephant kind of dry skin. And there are these freshly cut up wounds, which is flashy and bloody. So it was pretty fun to work on this guy and have the final result to show through. Same thing here on the left side of the slide is the final 2D paint over from the art directors, and on the right is the final 3D model you see in our cinematic. This guy's the Wing Demon. Very, very cool design. Unfortunately, the way we shot it in the end, we don't really see much of him. We only see the dominant wings, and it was actually pretty difficult to make the wings interesting and detailed. This also went through the same thing. The art director will come up with iterations and iterations of painting, and we'll settle on the final painting, and we'll go and try to translate it into 3D. So with that, I'm going to hand it over to Mike to talk a little bit about effects.
Hi there. So I wanted to take a little time to talk about some of the effects that you see inside the cinematic. What you see on the screen is probably what we're doing most of the time: water, fire, atmosphere types effects. Generally throwing lots of particles around the screen. For example, here's 30,000 bunnies being exploded. Oh, there goes a little fast. But we also have a little thing called intrinsic character effects I wanted to talk about. What you see here is something of the lesser evils that are on their thrones. And these were always envisioned as weeping smoke. So this is a pretty obvious effect, something you're going to see in the cinematic quite easy. But we do a lot of other smaller character effects, which are not so apparent. Some things like Arthas's eyes, it's hard to imagine him without that characteristic. But it has to be subtle. It has to blend in. And most importantly, it has to add to the performance. It can't distract from the performance. It's hard to imagine Tychus without his cigar, for example. But if we make that too apparent and if it's too blatant, then it's going to distract from the story, and that's not what we want. If we're calling attention to ourselves with these types of effects, then we're doing it wrong. We're making it bigger than life, and that's not something we want to do. So to talk about pulling a little bit more from real life, Stephen, you want to talk about that?
Sure. So, reference from real life. Those of you who are familiar with the Diablo universe, you would know that it's based on a very fantasy world. However, in this cinematic, we try to draw a lot of real-life references and try to make our cinematic much more believable and engaging. In this slide, you will see the look dev supervisor, Fintel, posing here for skin references. On the left, these little spheres that we wrap them in materials, for example, cloth, leather, some of the spheres are wood. And what we do with these is we try to photograph them in different lighting scenarios, and we try to study how materials actually behave under different lighting situations. This is more example of taking photograph as reference. On the left side, you see these spheres getting wrapped up by leather and suede. We use them to study how leather, the fall of the material is, what kind of texture and detail we can put on it. And eventually, these are used for Leah's leather vest and her pants. On the right side are the wood table that inspired us for Leah's antique wood table you see in Black Soulstone. And the metallic objects are for some prop sets and her Leah's accessory. Because we know that Black Soulstone is going to feature a lot of demons, the whole modeling team and look dev team actually took a field trip down to San Diego Zoo for a whole day. And we were able to study surface detail of these magnificent animals and also get some anatomy studies. Throughout the day, we took a lot of photo references and later on became very useful inspirations for the art director when they are designing the demons. This is a little turntable of some of the materials we actually used in Black Soulstone. We rendered them in different lighting scenarios to make sure that our CG material behaves similar to what real-life material would be. In here, you can see there's some wax we used for the candle. There's paper shader, there is cloth, leather, and wood. So these studies really help us to make a believable cinematic in the end. This is my, oops, too fast. Here we go. This is my favorite. In the beginning of the show, the art director wanted Asmodan to be this very translucent, very slimy creature. So we looked at hundreds and hundreds of photographs of frogs and turtles. And this is the particular frog picture that captured the art director's attention. So we tried to recreate it in 3D. And I'm rather proud of this rather slimy, wet, and moist frog flesh meatball thingy, which is pretty cool. So, of course, not only the creature and the environment sets were using actual live references. I'm going to pass it to Xin to talk a little bit about Leah.
Same as Steven mentioned, as for character, we did an intensively study from the real life, more than ever. So, since from the very beginning of the project, we know the biggest challenge for Black Soulstone is these super close-up shots. Not only about the face, eyes, we know it's going to be very challenging. The reason why is that we never done this super close-up in this distance with so many shots. And also, it's a female character's face. You want her looks pretty. On top of that, make the CG eyes looking believable. It's another layer of complexity. So the first thing we did is a photo session. We brought our producer Angela to on site, and our look dev supervisor Fing Teo and one of the art directors Jonathan Blueby. We set up the scene, light up the candles, blow up the smoke. We try to simulate a similar lighting situation for Black Soulstone. As on the left side is the color script, on the right side actually is the high-res picture we took from the photo session. Of course, this is already color tweaked and doing light comped by Fing Teo, which tried to come up with a look that the director can sign off. Here's another example. On the left side is color script. On the right side is the super eye close-up. So these images, the purpose of this photo session is two. One is that we can study those high-res images to analyze the color, to analyze the skin shader, interactivity between the skin and the light, and the DOF, all these factors. The second is that we can, from those photo sessions, we were able to capture the high-res texture maps from the real life by using a special camera rig the look-at supervisor designed. As on the left side is the color map from the real human, Angela, which is Angela's face, pretty face. On the right is the specularity layer, which showing how the skin will interact with the environment and the light. So from the photo sessions, we started, and all these pictures end up with my desktop. We look at these pixels. We studied those pixels throughout the Black Soulstone production. This is one of many broken work in progress render. The reason why I want to show you two guys is that I want to show how easy you can get a fakery, bad-looking CG feel of a render for the character once you render close-up. As we find out that the final look is set up by the lights hits on the surface, which interpreted by the surface shaders. All these three elements have to work perfectly to each other. In order to control the look, you have to control these three elements: the lights, the surface volume, and the shader. As we keep developing the skin shader from the previous one to this one, it's a big jump. Actually, this took us endless rendering, endless tweaking, endless hundreds of map painting in order to get in this stage. With a very close collaboration with one of the lighting lead, Mark Lai, we found out actually one of the processes we think we are really proud of is the lighting look dev, which is this process I'm talking about. From this lighting look dev process, we work the assets directly on with the lighters. So in order to make the light, the shader, and the surface all working perfectly with each other, so we work close to each other in order to set up the look. Along the way, we keep trying. There's different studies, but at this point, the skin looks a lot better, but still not 100% up to our standard. The skin still looks a little bit crunchy, a little bit contrast. So from previous slide to this one is another big, big fun that I think we found out really useful by introducing the soft light approach. I think the Graham is going to be going to the detail a little bit more in the later. By introducing the soft light, the skin looks much more realistic. And also, we instantly fall in love with this test render. We felt this is the look that we want. Soon, we retweaked the shader and texture maps all around just in order to work with this lighting. From then on, we established the look for the super close-up shots. Keep tweaking, lots of small tweaks, changes. Finally, we got this stage. Of course, we didn't stop at the even after the lighting look dev. As we introduced the enemy displacement in order to get a much more subtle wrinkle facial movement, we kept looking at the deformations in order to make sure the hands, eyes, the body works correct under the light. The animation team did the same thing and has their own take from the reference. James.
Cool, thanks, Gene. So I'll talk a little bit about what the animation team. Thank you, Shane. Yeah. So the animation team did their own thing in order to prepare for working on this cinematic. We started with photography. And the reason why we did that is we took a bunch of photos of all the different possible muscles of the face. We wanted to identify every muscle. And our thinking was, if we could identify and reproduce every one of those muscles on a character rig, then we'd have infinite amount of facial expressions to use when we do the animation. And it worked really well. And it also went very well with Diablo's stylized reality, the very, very realistic style. We also took specific videos. Since we had to do a super close-up of the eyes, we studied eye behavior. We even studied specific shot video. Here's Angela again, falling asleep. Here's our director, Nick Carpenter, doing the same thing. And we learned a lot from that about how the human eye has many, many different types of half blinks and flickers and things like that. We identified all those tiny little muscles and we put them all in there into the final result, like this. And all that research really paid off. We also, in doing the animation, we take that reference, we take that research, but we also have to exaggerate it so it comes across on the screen even more clear. Now, for Leah's close-up hand shot, we took this specific video, and we learned quite a bit about the mechanics of writing. We also learned subtle details about how when you write, it even indents, the pen indents the page a little bit. We put some of that in there, too. From this research, we also learned in detail how the shape of the hand needs to be just dead on. It was a close collaboration between the modeling, between the rigging and animation teams in order to get the shape of the knuckles and all the individual wrinkles of the hand just right. And I'm actually going to hand it over to Jim now, talk a little bit more about the Leah process.
Thanks, James. So much as how animation studies anatomy, and Steve and Sheen, takes a look at how light behaves across different objects, and Steven studies his balls, we study hair and dynamic systems. So one of the things we do is simulation, and simulation we use for cloth and hair. In this example, one of Blizzard's finest, Allison, decided to help us. We went around looking for, ran through different offices looking for someone who had hair that looked kind of like Leia's, and this was, as close as we could get. And so we had Allison perform kind of what was happening in that final shot. And so, we blow wind through it. We try to simulate the environments that we're going to try to copy. And one of the important things that we noticed is that her hair actually ended up covering her face a lot. And we use reference to get the feel, but we don't actually try to copy the way it actually ends up being. So now that we've done our homework, we have our boards out, how do we actually get this to screen? Blizzard Cinematics, this is just a tiny representation of our team. We have a wonderful team, and it's a pleasure working here. It's the best place I can imagine working. And there's a lot of machinery, there's a lot of mechanisms that we use, and a lot of technology to get through this. And for the rest of the talk, we're going to show you some of how we do this. So in the example of Leia's hair, we actually use a cloth solver, a cloth simulation, to move it. And hair is an extremely complex system. There's hundreds of thousands of hairs on a human head. And it would just be intractable to try to actually compute all that. So what we do is we do a layered approach. So this is Leia's hair rig. You can see at the uppermost level, there are these large clumps, and then we do individual strips, and then those strips represent, dozens of hairs at a time. So one of our simulation artists will take this rig and run it through the animation. They'll adjust parameters and try to get the feel that the director wants. So in this pass, you'll see that it's the larger clumps, the gross motion. And then next we'll do sort of the more detailed, higher-end clumps, the finer individual strays that really add to that realism. Because CG hair has a problem where you start seeing like these big clumps move in as one giant group too often. And then in the end, this is our sort of the final result of how the hair moves. Another thing that production tech does is we build the rigs. And a rig is basically the digital puppet that the animators use to move the characters. Because we begin with just geometry, and then we have to add the mechanisms in there to make it move. So in the beginning, you see the skeleton of Azmodan. He's got a lot of joints on there, and then the mesh gets added, and then the controls get layered on top of that. And the reason you have these controls is you need to move. It would be impossible for the animators to move, joints one at a time. So we work very closely with them to kind of determine what kind of controls that we need for Azmodan. Azmodan's kind of a tricky character because he's so massive. He's got this giant upper body, and he has this kind of like crab leg lower body. And he's also supposed to do some more, he's pretty dexterous in the end. And so here's an example of just turning one control. The legs stay pinned to the ground, the abdomen moves around. And we have a pretty amazing proprietary rigging system that allows us to rebuild this rig quickly, because there's one thing we do at Blizzard is iterate like crazy. And so designs continue to change. And this allows us to basically, absorb those changes as quickly as possible. There, he's sliding the leg around. And you'll notice some of the controls basically pin it to different places just to make the animators' lives a little easier. And you can see on his face, he's got numerous controls, and then those are also layered in different ways. And here you can just pull that one jaw control and you can make him talk. Okay. And to give you an example of some of the complex stuff that Azmodan does, in this shot, he's completely bent over. And a creature of this girth couldn't really do this, so we cheat it in CG. So let's pull the camera back and see what Azmodan is actually doing in this shot. He's completely flipped over, and you'll notice his body is just cracked in half. And his spike is going through his ass, and you can kind of see the backside of his crab butt there. And it's the advantage of CG. We're making an impossible creature. We're allowed to do impossible things. But again, rigs wouldn't really be anything without amazing animators, and we have the best animators in the world. I know because I've met all animators in the world, and we have the best ones. So here's James to talk about that process.
You're awesome, Jim. Thanks. So then the animation team comes in, and we have these awesome rigs that production tech made, and we need to design. We have to figure out how we get Azmodan to move. Looking at him, we usually, when we start any character, especially if it's a creature, we look to nature to figure out, what we're going to do, how, what's a good jumping off point, right? So this guy, he's kind of an abomination. There's nothing in nature like him, exactly. So we just pull from the best thing we can and kind of combine different things. Like Jim had mentioned crab, and crab was an awesome reference for his lower body. Just the way he carries his weight, the exoskeletal shapes and everything, it was perfect. But then for his upper body, we were sumo, perfect. Azmodan is like sumo crabman or something. Just the upper body, the size and weight, this warrior shape, it worked out really well. So now we take that research, and then we grab the camera and we grab our director, and this is Nick Carpenter again, and we shoot some specific reference for the shot, and we start jamming, we start animating. Now, this shot in particular I wanted to show you because Nick had something very important in mind about Azmodan, and part of the story about him is we wanted to have him massive, huge, and sort of cumbersome, a little bit labored, 20% labored as he gets up. It's not so easy for this huge guy to stand up after being down there. Another note about reference in the animation team or for any artists out there is that the idea for shooting reference is not really just a copy. You're kind of doing yourself a disservice if you just like shoot and copy. That doesn't really do anything for you. The reason why we don't do that so much is because we want to make something new. We want to learn from it, and then also we have our own ideas. So we have the reference, we have our own ideas, we have multiple takes that we draw information from. We process that all in our head, our artist brains, and then it comes out as something that we've never seen before, right? And that's mainly what we do. Pretty much all the teams here kind of do that sort of thing.
One by one,
maybe you can turn the sound up on this one.
Fell into your trap, but not me.
So yeah, let me play that for you one more time.
One by one, our brethren fell into your trap, but not me.
This was our next production challenge. We had to get this guy to talk. Not only talk, but very close to the camera. So the first challenge is he doesn't have any lips. He can't, how does he speak without any lips? So the animator had to get very creative. We had to put something in there to substitute for lips, and that's where the creativity comes in. We decided to use the teeth and all these weird different mandible pieces that he has on his mouth in order to make a seal and actually make it convincing that this huge demonic guy can actually talk, and it kind of works. One other thing about this was that it also lent well for the story. It just kind of happened that when you watch this animation, it's very unsettling. And when this guy kind of gets up in your grill really close and he's scaring Leah, it just has a very uneasy feel to it because you don't really see this sort of skeletal, toothy creature talk right at you. The next challenge after that was Azmodan's army. Now, Nick kind of gave us a criteria for this. For Azmodan's army, it had to be innumerable, just countless numbers of demons. They had to be chaotic, and it just needed to be sort of a primordial mess that was coming out of this mountain. So here's an example of some of the different animations that we did to populate the scene. Here's some of the animation cycles which we use to populate the very, very far background of the scenes. Now we also do some more high definition animations that are called hero animations that we use in the foreground. And that's the stuff that's like right near the camera. And here's another thing I wanted to show you. This is an example of one of those like high definition animations. But I'm showing it to you because you don't really get a good look at this particular animation in the final cinematic. So you're getting a special BlizzCon treat here. This is the winged demon walking, and there's a special treatment that we did on the fingers and the wings and things like that. All right, and let's see, who's next? I'm going to give it back over to Jim and talk a little bit more about how we do the crowds.
Thanks, James. So I love Diablo. Diablo is, I remember Diablo 1 was the first game I ever played where I would just lose time. I'd wake up out of this Diablo coma and I'd realize I hadn't eaten and days had passed. And Diablo is all just about slaughtering demons. You know, the whole game, it's just wanton murder of these things, right? And so we knew we had to have a shot where we just had, tons of demons and really show off like what Diablo is all about. And the cool thing is you get to kill these guys in the game, these actual demons. It's awesome. So this is an example. This terrain on the bottom is the entire, like what our environmental modelers built as this huge valley. And one of our concerns was that we'd actually have to fill up this entire valley full of demons. But luckily, once the camera was in place, you can see that that little red line represents the only demons we actually had to put in the scene. So we got away with a lot of that. In the upper left, you can see that as the trail kind of fades off towards the mountain, the demons themselves become smaller than individual pixels, so we just say, okay, we don't need any more demons back there. So that's how we go about and populate the scene. And one of the, we pay so much attention to silhouettes and detail at Blizzard Cinematics. And so here is an example of some of the director's notes. So you'll notice we'll go in and we'll change individual demons' weapons. We'll say, well, this guy's carrying an axe, but we want the profile to look, a little more dangerous, more threatening. So we're going to change these guys to have pole arms and just completely change. We'll go into individual detail of adjusting the demons in this army that we have, thousands of. And in the end, this is kind of how it looks. Not all of the demons are in here, but it gives you an idea. There's that wing demon James was talking about. And, animation, rigging, this is just a small part of what goes into the cinematic. There's also effects, which really tie everything together and are so important. And Mike's here to talk about that.
Thanks, James. So I wanted to take it back to some of those character effects I was talking about earlier and talked about an effect that actually didn't make it into the cinematic, which was Asmo's lava drool. So originally, Asmo was envisioned to have constant drooling lava coming out of his mouth while he was speaking. Here you can see some early tests for some of the things that we tried, just trying to get a fluid on a surface that was deforming and sort of complex, like maybe perhaps we didn't even have animation for done at this point, we just wanted to try it out. And we started working with this and going forward. Here's an early take that kind of looks like my daughter, my 2-year-old at dinner. How adorable. But as we started to pull it back into the real world, here's another early test. While Asmo was actually speaking, we were finding that the lava was starting to have a lot more questions than it was actually trying to answer. Like, for example, how fast was this lava going to move? How much farther down the chest was it going to go? And were we going to be worried about continuity of lava between shots? Because that would really take the level of difficulty way, way up. Here's another example where we took the speed and the viscosity of the lava way, way up and sort of way down so you could actually slow it down. And even this one, we were just wondering, maybe this isn't the right track. So finally, this is our final concept drool. And you can see by now we've actually pulled it way, way back. We only have 3 little rivulets of lava that are being pulled out of the corners of the mouth. And actually, we took this one all the way to completion. You can see here our final beauty pass for that particular shot, just these 3 tiny little rivulets of lava. But during the entire process while we were working on this, and the artist Bill LaBarge who was working on this, we were beginning to wonder, was this just too distracting? And it was kind of making Asmo feel sloppy, and actually even worse than that, it was starting to make him feel comical, which is not a story point. That's not something we wanted to go for. So we killed it. Here's a little breakdown of some of the more traditional effects around Asmo. Obviously, we have the glowing mouth. We have smoke and embers that are coming out, glowing eyes, and we even have a heat distortion plate on top of that. A little atmosphere on top of that, and there you have it. So I know I kind of glossed over quite a number of the lighting passes in there. Let me turn it over to Graham. He can tell you a little bit more about that.
All right, thanks, Mike. So as a lighter, I've got one of the best jobs in the whole place, and that's because I get to light everybody's awesome work upstream. But seriously, the main job of the lighter is to light in a way that supports the story. Now, Black Soulstone was calling for something that was a lot more realistic and less stylized than some of our previous work. But when I say realistic, that's not quite the same as reality, and everything is very designed, and I would say the stylized reality is what we were really going for. Now, in order to achieve that more realistic look that we were going for, we had to adopt a number of techniques and technologies that have been used by some of the major motion picture visual effects studios. And I wanted to just say a quick thanks to John Lands and Chris Rock and all of the tools and development team guys who did such an amazing job improving our RenderMan pipeline throughout this production. So, lighting Leah, nobody looks good under a harsh spotlight. And so when we got into lighting Leah, we had to make some choices regarding the type of light sources that we were using. And here I'll show you a couple of different lighting passes that we did for Leah for this particular shot. And I'll talk a little bit more about what I'm mentioning here. Light can be hard or soft. And basically what that means is a hard light gets very sharp shadows, gets a lot of crisp details. A soft light is a lot more flattering for a character. How you achieve a hard or soft light is really a matter of how big the light source is. So we took some liberties here with Leah, and what we did was we combined elements from a hard spotlight, like the specular details on her face, with the sort of softer roll-off that you see on this soft area light, and we combined them together to achieve the final result. Now, when you're lighting a shot is all about layers. And there's two kinds of layers that we deal with in lighting that I'll talk about. The first I call lighting passes. So here you can see some of the different lighting passes for Leah. We've got key light, rim light, environment, fill. Now, light is additive. And what that lets us do is we can render out each of these lighting passes completely separate. And then we just add them all together to create the final result. So here you can see them adding together, and we've got the total lighting result for Leah. Now, once we've added all of these lights together, we can turn around and tint each one of them to a different color and intensity in order to control the final lighting for the scene. So here I'll show you an example where I'm tinting the different light colors to create completely different lighting results just using the same lighting passes. So the second kind of lighting layer that we talk about I call render elements. And these are just the various components of a shot. And sometimes you have to separate a shot into these render elements simply to get it to render. And other times you separate it so that you have control over each of the layers. And so you've got a matte painting background, you've got Asmodan, Leah, etc. And each of these render elements basically just gets layered from the back to the front. And so this is sort of a simplified example of how that works. We generally have many, many more layers than this, but this gives you the idea. And so here's the final lighting for the shot. Now, to talk a little bit more about some of these render elements that you see here and some of the effects passes, I'll hand it back to Mike.
Thanks, Graham. So I wanted to talk about a more traditional effect because we've been talking about a lot of characters effects, and I want to talk about the wall destruction shot. Here you have two concepts. We had to take down the interior of the Black Soulstone and reveal this volcano and the army beyond all sort of in one shot. This is going to be very complicated. We want the shot to be as detailed as possible, and we knew it was going to be a challenge right from the start. Here's the shot as exists in the cinematic. You can see we go from an interior environment, and then we have to have this exposure change and go through all that to see the volcano behind as Asmodon reveals his plan. So with that in mind, we wanted to cut up this entire wall, and then we knew that was going to be very, very challenging. So I'll introduce one technical term, which is called Voronoi. Voronoi is a type of noise that you can use in production. And basically, you can imagine as if you scattered a whole bunch of points along a plane. And then if I drew individual lines equal distance from all those points, I'd end up with something that looks like this, sort of like a cellular texture or maybe dried up paint on the ground. If you take out the center of all these pieces and just leave the lines, you have something that sort of looks like a shattered window. And you could easily use these types of lines of force to cut up anything that you wanted. Add those things together or start combining them, some of these individual shapes, and you start to get some pretty organic looking type materials. And that's kind of what we have here. So this was partially some of the way that the wall was cut up. Here's the final animation of the wall and just a preview. And I just wanted to point out and put my hat off to James's team that this wall basically did not go through a simulation. Our director had something very specific in mind when he wanted to have this wall fall. And so most of these pieces were animated by hand. So crazy. Thank you. So once we had our animated wall, we decided we would take it a little further and gave it back to the modeling team. Here are some of the hero sculpts that the modeling did for some of those pieces and started to put in pieces of the wall, the interior, almost like bricks and mortar and even cement, you can imagine, in some of these. And once they were done with that, we handed that back and we had our initial wall. So let's get to some of those effects passes that Graham was talking about. Here's our shot again, and we'll go a little bit into it, and then we'll freeze the frame for a second. So we start off with the initial one, which is just sort of little particle points and dust that's coming through that wall. Added that, we start adding rocks. The artist Hosuk Chang developed an enormous amount of rocks for this. I think there were over 40,000 little tiny rocks that are being generated as the pieces, combine and hit each other. And here on the top of that, we put on a whole bunch of smoke and dust that's being in on either side of the wall. Let's add it back into the shot. So here's our rocks, here's our background, here's all of our effects passes on top of that. Once we have those, we'll put the characters back in. And finally, we'll start adding some more sort of volumetric atmosphere, a little bit more haze and dust, and there you have it. That's our final shot. So it falls to me to say thank you very much. I wanted to say, thank you. This is a very small representative of the Blizzard Cinematics team. We're all super excited that you got to see that at BlizzCon. Thank you very much to the entire Cinematics team for their hard work. And I cannot wait for you guys to see the rest of the cinematics in Diablo 3. They are epic. Thanks again for coming. If you have any questions, please feel free to ask them.
Hey guys. So recently when major studios like Pixar and DreamWorks have started releasing their CG films, they'll also include a short. Something that maybe ties up the story, like an epilogue or something. When Blizzard decides to release their cinematic collection on Blu-ray, do you think you might throw in an extra like that? And if I can suggest it, the Battle of Arthas and Illidan at the base of Icecrown Citadel. I know the history of this cinematic with Blizzard. I know they always wanted to do it, and it was just cut because of time. This would be the perfect excuse for you guys to be able to get your hands on it and really just make it shine.
Okay, well, what really takes up most of our time when we go about the production of our cinematics is the cinematics, right? I mean, we spend a lot of time figuring out what goes up on screen, and I think altogether we worked on it for like several years, all the cinematics in their entirety. So that leaves little time at this point to to do extra work. Though, I mean, we're constantly working on it. We've been making quick strides with our department in the last couple of years. Big adjustments were made. The department grew quite a bit, and that'll enable us in the future to definitely be thinking about these sort of things. So,
yeah,
I mean, all of us are, you know, certainly keen on exploring these.
Sounds awesome.
Yeah, our number one priority, though, is always to support the games. That's, you know, what we try to do the most.
Yes, Blizzard has a really rich history with cinematics dating back since Warcraft 2 and beyond. But would you, I know it takes a lot of work, a lot of time, but has discussions ever been brought up about maybe remaking some of the really older stuff? Like, not George Lucas's up, but just like really remaking it. I know it's a lot of work. I know it's infeasible, but like it would just be really cool to just see some of that older stuff that really hasn't dated well. Like maybe some of the StarCraft 2 intros or something like that. I think it would just be a really cool treat.
I think that's a great idea, but we have not actually talked about remaking anything, but I think it's an excellent, excellent idea. That's cool.
I love the StarCraft cinematics. That kind of got me into doing this. So yeah, they're fantastic, but we have a whole lot of work to do. So.
Well, more so than maybe redoing old stuff, we're just keen on doing new stuff, and you know, I mean, we won't rule it out, but you know, there's bigger and better things ahead. So we'll see.
Yeah, like what he was saying, it would make a really good treat on like a Blu-ray disc.
It would, yeah.
We'll think about it.
How you guys doing? This is an environment question. As an environment artist in the film industry, the name of the game most of the time is speed and efficiency. So a company like Blizzard that's enthralled with detail, how often do you make the call to model and texture light something even if it's far away, or just say, put on a card system and nuke?
Well, you know what? That's actually something we've learned through the production of the Diablo 3 cinematics, just to become a little more efficient. We used to come from a place where we went ahead and modeled everything, you know, from the closest object to the furthest polygon. And just I mean, we kind of realized as we went through the production that it's just not feasible to do this every time, and it's just smarter to go ahead and identify where you need to have the high-res detail and be able to use a little bit more smoke and mirrors for the things that don't matter. It's also part of our storytelling approach, focusing on the things that matter and trying to apply and let things fall into dark in areas that don't matter so much. For instance, the study area here for Leah, we actually had part of the background modeled out to the smallest book out there, but you actually don't end up seeing anything. It's smoky, it's blurry, it's dark. So we decided for a lot of the things we could just get away with matte paintings with simple backgrounds, and so we did go through that process.
We have time for one last question.
Hi, that was like one of the best cinematics I've ever seen for a game, so that's pretty awesome.
Thank you.
So my question is...
Thank you. Thank you.
Seriously, it was awesome. So my question is, the scene with all of the creatures running, is that influenced by Lord of the Rings at all? Because the first thing I see in that scene is with the fiery. Is that... Just wondering.
Well, I mean... in the job we do, which has to do with a lot of fantasy worlds and whatnot. I mean, it's kind of hard to get around nowadays. The Lord of the Rings book and the movies in particular. I mean, we looked at a number of things. Movies are a big inspiration for us. I wouldn't say it was the sole inspiration for this sort of scene, and this is something that probably the people who create the story can answer more precisely than I can. Certainly, we take a lot of inspiration from everywhere. Lord of the Rings was one of them. There's nature that we look at. There's art that we look at. We went and did trips to museums to look at you know, classic paintings and that sort of thing. Their approach to you know, skin color and whatnot. So we look at all these things, and if that reminds you a little bit of a lot of things, then I'll take that as a compliment.
How about one last round of applause for our panelists?
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, everybody. And Diablo 3 is fucking awesome, in case you don't know that. We've been playing it at work. It's so good. Team 3 is awesome. Thanks.
Thank you for attending the Blizzard Cinematics Diablo 3 Making of the Black Soulstone panel. Coming up next,